Hello, fellow human, on this bittersweet adventure of being alive, and welcome back to Why Your Life Really Matters, the Podbook, Chapter 3. Now, in the last chapter, I said that I had come to believe the next big jump in our evolving understanding of what the hell this is that we're in would be a return of spirituality, but in a whole new way. And I said in this chapter, I would try and state in one line a foundation for how we can come to understand the nature of existence that can act as a foundation for all the things I want to say later to elaborate the new worldview. So let's jump straight in. I want to suggest existence is a process of becoming. What does that mean? Well, have a look at your experience. I don't know about you, but I'm guessing it's the same. All I've ever experienced is this process in which every moment is new. Always. The past is constantly becoming something more. Now is newness. And what I want to suggest is that that process of becoming is what has got us from the very simple beginnings of the universe all the way to this process of becoming. And it's happening now, and now, and now, and the past always becomes something new, something more. And that this process of becoming is one of evolutionary emergence, so that the new is in more emergent ways, meaning it builds on what's gone before and couldn't exist when there's an emergent, really emergent moment. It's not just different, it couldn't have existed before. It builds on what has been before. You couldn't have this world of images we call the psyche until there was senses. And you couldn't have senses until there was life. And you couldn't have life until there was matter, and back. So I think this really elegant idea can do a lot of work. Now, there's a few key differences, I think, for how I'm using this idea and how you might have come across something similar associated with the mainstream ideas in science. Because I'm pushing it much harder. I'm saying everything that has any form has formed in this one process of becoming. Anything that has any characteristics has arisen in this one process of becoming. There is nothing outside. Well, doesn't science say that? Well, does it? Here's one big example: the laws of nature. It still has very commonly a pre-evolutionary idea that the laws of nature, well, originally they were seen as bequeathed by God. Just like God bequeathed the laws of morality, he bequeathed the laws of nature which run the natural world. Now we've left that image of the lawmaker behind a long time ago. The whole metaphor of law is mistaken. But I want to explore with you the idea that the laws of nature, the regularities, have themselves evolved. And that matters a lot, because what that does is it undercuts the reductionism and determinism, which is very common, that somehow the bottom levels of the evolutionary process, matter, is running all the other higher levels, like me talking to you now, through a process of determinism, which is the laws of nature just relentlessly doing their thing, and the rest is epiphenomena. That disappears. That's big. And it allows me then to say why I think we should take seriously the idea that the evolutionary process has led to the domain which spirituality is exploring. And as I said in the last chapter, that's not supernatural. It's part of the one process of evolving. There is nothing outside, because existence is part of this one process of becoming, even if there's other universes. And some people think that should be taken seriously. We'll discuss that later. They are also part of this one process of becoming, because that's what existence is. Existence is the process of becoming in ever more emergent ways. So, that idea, so simple really, I think has the power to create the new worldview that I want to share with you. But before I go on to elaborate that, I want to address what I think is a common problem with certain ways of seeing spirituality, most ways actually, and very common ways of seeing science, which let's call them mythic and reductionist, just so we have a term. And I think they make the same mistake in opposite directions. And if we can see this, it opens up new possibilities. So I've already discussed reductionist science. What's the mistake there? Well, what we've discovered, and this will be important in the next chapter, in physics, is that if we want to understand the foundational levels of reality, the best tool we have is mathematics. Which is why physics can seem so cold and distant from our human experience, because it is. It's very distant. It's the very basics. It's like comparing the digital information on an MP3 with listening to the piece of music that makes your heart soar and your feet tap. And now, what physics does often with its reductionism is it goes, that's what's real. And then it reduces the higher levels of emergence to this lower level. And I think that is, in a sense, anachronistic. It's using the language which is appropriate to the foundation, mathematics, for the higher levels of emergence, where it can still play some role, but you need a whole lot of different language. To take the example of the MP3, you know that that's just digital information on its foundational level. It's ones and zeros. It's maths. But at the more emergent level where you're listening to it, it's beautiful and it's groovy and you need all of this language to understand it. You can't reduce it. So you're using the wrong language for this level. And I think spirituality makes exactly the same mistake, but in the opposite direction. It is also anachronistic use of language. So it takes language which is much warmer, much more, it's from the human level. It takes language from the human level and applies it to the foundation, where it doesn't make any sense. So it will talk about, and I've done this, this is a criticism of myself in my past books. It will talk about, at the beginning, there is like a big mind. Well, there's not going to be any minds for billions of years. It'll say there's consciousness and it wants to know itself, or maybe call it spirit. I've done that. But it's still the same idea. It's a being that has intentions. It intends to manifest itself, or it has desires to know itself. As I said, all of these ideas of intentions and consciousness and purpose, these won't evolve until billions of years. They will evolve on the biological and then human level. And the mistake of mythicism, an understandable mistake, because human beings are... Mythicism is old. It's beautiful. I love myths. I've written many books on them. They're beautiful, but they need to be understood for what they are. And they're not very good at ontology. They're not very good at telling you what the nature of reality is, because they're very old. So when you've got only a handful of ideas, it makes perfect sense to go, well, the earth is like a mother and the sky is like a father. Once you've got a lot more ideas, we can do better than that. So what's happening is you're taking ideas from the human level and putting them on the level we need to understand. Actually, it turns out with maths, something much simpler in a way, a different type of understanding. Which is why when science goes, oh, look, there's nothing, there's no consciousness at the beginning, there's no God at the beginning, there's no intentions at the beginning, we can best understood it with mathematical formulas. It just feels like, oh, that's so cold. Oh, is that true? And I want to agree with science. I think they're right. But that's because the things which we relate to as having warmth come from our human level. And that's going to take a long time to evolve. But it doesn't negate them. It just goes, they're the most emergent level. No wonder they feel so good compared to a level which can only be understood with maths. I mean, not that maths isn't amazing. We'll have a whole chapter on maths, but there's no love, there's no purpose, and so on. So this anachronistic thing where science is using the wrong language at the wrong level, spirituality is using the wrong language at the wrong level, but in opposite ways. If you can see that, then it's like, okay, we can understand this whole journey of evolution as needing us to understand it on its own level, including the reality of the spiritual level, which is the most recent and emergent dimension to come into existence. So one last thought in this chapter, which is the problem is, or dilemma, is that whatever you pay attention to, you will find out about. So if you're someone who has, like me, paid attention to the spiritual level, you'll go, but this is really important and it's real. But if you haven't paid attention to physics, and I say, yeah, it's all understandable with maths, and it's, I talk about quantum physics, all of which I will do as we go through, that can sound like, what? What's that? And conversely, if you've really looked at physics or chemistry or whatever, you can really see how that works. But if you've never paid attention to spirituality, let's say, it can feel like, well, that's just woo-woo. What's that? If you just pay attention to your biological existence, then life can feel like a constant struggle just to stay alive. And some people are forced into that. Most people throughout history. If you just pay attention to our social life, it can feel like it's all about power dynamics and you become narrow and you think that's reality. What I'm encouraging in this exploration together is we open up and go, oh, it's all real. And if we want to understand this, we have to see how all these different levels have emerged in one process of forming, one process of becoming, and how they all relate. And in particular, what the previously exiled level of spirituality understood in this new way can teach us about the importance of our lives. So what have I been saying in this chapter? My one sentence description of existence. It's a process of becoming. Have a look. It's got us from very simple beginnings to this, including the spiritual dimension. The problem with science is it tends to be reductionist. It uses the language that is appropriate for physics to deal with everything that comes above it, and therefore it can't really grasp these higher levels. Spirituality, same problem, opposite direction. It takes the language that's important on the human level of intention and feeling and purpose and consciousness and mind and all, and puts it at the beginning. It's not there. The other problem with both of them is they put something outside of this natural process of evolution. So the laws of nature, where are they? Well, I'm suggesting they've evolved. On the spiritual side, normally God, soul, spirit, all of that is supernatural, outside. What I'm suggesting is nothing outside. One process of forming, that's what existence is. So, in the next chapter, I want to go into a really important idea from physics, which is information, and bring it together with a really important idea from spirituality, which is oneness, which is often how the experience of awakening is described. And I think this is the next step in building this new worldview, which can make plausible the things that I've been beginning to say in this chapter.